You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. And be sure to smash that like button.
LSU had their pro day on Wednesday over at the indoor practice facility. We gave you a few details that kind of trickled out to start the show, but I wasn't there to actually see it. So let's talk to somebody who was. That, of course, Ross Jackson, LouisianaSports.net, and Locked On Saints on Twitter at Ross Jackson Nola. Ross, we appreciate the time as always. How are you?
Hey, man, doing great. Glad to be here with you. Thanks for having me on. It's great to be able to enjoy the great city of Baton Rouge for a little bit today.
Yeah, there you go. Are you still here, or have you headed back to?
No, I already made my way back to New Orleans.
Okay.
Not that I was in a hurry to leave Baton Rouge.
Hey, man. Depends on the day sometimes. All right, let's talk LSU's pro day. First, Saints contingent in attendance. I saw Mickey Loomis. Who else was there from the Black and Gold?
Yeah, General Manager Mickey Loomis, as well as Assistant General Manager Kai Harley were around. Director of Pro Personnel Michael Parrington was in attendance as well. A couple of coaching staff members as well. You've got run game coordinator new to the team, and TJ Paganetti, who was there. You also had Brian Young, who's been a longtime coach working with the defense, specifically the defensive line, former Saints defensive lineman himself, who's now the assistant defensive line coach. He was present. And then the Saints also had a staff member there, Ted Rath, who's their new director of sports science. Those are the ones that I saw and were able to identify. That might not be the complete list, but still a pretty sizable contingent there with all the different pro days going on today on Wednesday.
That's what I was going to ask you next. Is that normal? Is that the normal size of a contingency that the Saints would bring to LSU?
It's a pretty good size. I mean, obviously last year was really unique, right? I mean, you had, big-time names like Brian Thomas Jr., and you had, of course, Jaden Daniels and all sorts of stuff. So it's going to always depend upon the class and everything. But I would say that that's a pretty good size contingent based upon the fact that you also had the Ohio State Pro Day going on, the Boise State Pro Day going on. So several high-profile ones or high-profile prospects in the Boise State example kind of going on at the same time.
Yeah, if there's one pro day we know the Saints aren't going to miss, it's Ohio State. It's like they're home away from home, Columbus, Ohio.
Right.
All right, let's talk about some of the guys that showed out today. Who was the guy that created the most buzz that everyone gathered around, that everyone just had to see out there today at pro day for LSU?
Well, I'll tell you what, Mason Taylor, the tight end, was obviously a guy that a lot of people had eyes on. He came out there, ran his 40, hit 4.65, I think is the official fastest that LSU had posted. I do believe that some folks had, 4.59. This is always kind of the thing about pro days is you get a lot of different stopwatches, you get a lot of different times and everything. But it seems like the official number that's going right now is 4.65. We'll see if that adjusts. But I'll tell you what, 28 bench reps when he was out there. His movement in the short shuttle, his movement in the three-cone were both impressive as well. Measured in great, massive 79-inch wingspan, so that's going to show a lot of teams catch radius, all those other things. 6'5", 246 pounds as well in terms of his measurement. So he came in at prototypical NFL tight end size. So he would probably be the guy that the most people gathered around for, and he did not disappoint. I think there were a lot of eyes on Kiren Lacy as well. But I do want to shout out running back Josh Williams, who put on a show. He ended up blazing with a 4.45 40-yard dash, I believe, in terms of confirmed times, the fastest 40 that we saw today. But added to that, a 42-inch vertical as well as a 10-foot 2-inch broad jump, so showed you the explosion as well. Then went up at 5'8", 196 pounds, and put up 23 bench reps. He outbenched a couple of offensive and defensive linemen through this year's process. And so I thought that he was really, really impressive as well.
I was going to ask you about Josh Williams because, Ross, you dive into the draft incredibly deep. Did you have a grade on Josh Williams before you saw him today at LSU Pro Day?
I did, yeah. I kind of looked at him as like a late day 3, potentially priority free agent guy because he didn't get a lot of, do a ton during his time in college. And I don't mean that as like he didn't, he wasn't productive or anything. He just didn't have a lot of opportunities, right? He had 117 carries last year, and before that, he had never broken 100 carries in a season. So he was one of those guys that you look at and you went, okay, you like the speed, you like a little bit of what you see on the tape, but he has some things that are kind of underdeveloped and stuff like that, which is commonly the case when you're a collegiate guy going into the NFL and you don't have a ton of touches. I think he's got just over 300 total carries in his career, if I remember correctly. And some guys get that in an entire season, right? Yeah. And but with those testing numbers and things like that, like he might have moved that, at least that undrafted free agent floor up a little bit, depending on what this does when it sends people back to the tape. That's always the thing to remember with this, is that like these scouts, these coaches, these people that are in attendance, these numbers don't make you draftable or undraftable unless you're dramatically disappointing or dramatically surprising. But what they will do is that they'll send you back to the tape to go and confirm what you saw in the testing. And so if the game speed matches what the testing speed was, then that might be something that ends up kind of working in his favor. He might have done himself some favors today. 314
career carries for Josh Williams at LSU. Look at Ross.
Nailed it.
Yeah, told y'all. I mean, just dives in as deep as anybody. I did when you brought him up, because I was absolutely going to mention Josh. I mean, it was hard to miss the numbers that he was putting up today if you were on Twitter or X at all. I do want to go back to Mason Taylor though, because I know that's somebody that maybe could be an option for the Saints. Is that realistic? Do you think?
I don't think it's unrealistic at all. I mean, I think a lot of people are pointing to, well, they just paid, $10 million per year to Juwan Johnson, and that's fine. But after this year, guys like Foster Morrow as well as Taysom Hill, they're in contract years this year. And so drafting this year in order to be able to develop a tight end to maybe take a larger role in 2026 is not the worst idea at all for the New Orleans Saints, especially in Kellen Moore's offense, which loves an all-around tight end, and that's kind of what Mason Taylor does. He checks all those boxes. He can block, he can run routes, he can catch the football, all these other pieces. I think that he's definitely still somebody to watch for New Orleans. They might have to burn a second-round pick on him now as opposed to a third-round pick, but we'll certainly see how things move for him. But, yeah, I think he's a realistic option for them, even with the investment in Juwan Johnson.
All right, Will Campbell. Ross, have your arms ever grown in 2 weeks?
Yes, but I think that was a long time ago.
Yeah. I kid, obviously. Well, measured in at 33 inches. I mean, what's the story there though with Will? I mean, 32.58 at the combine, 33 at LSU's Pro Day. That's gonna raise some eyebrows, but they cleared it up.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is something this is another one of those things that happened, and really, if we did more than one scouting combine in the NFL, even if it was an NFL-sanctioned event 3 times over, you're probably going to get 3 different measurements on a lot of these guys. It's a different person measuring. It's a different strategy. It's the same strategy of measurement, but, I mean, goodness, like, there's always going to be something a little bit different. And, look, depending upon, we've seen guys grow their hands. Was it Jalen Milroe's hands grew between the Senior Bowl as well as the combine and stuff like that, a little bit of hand yoga, like all these things do make a difference. And so, look, I think the bottom line when it comes to Will Campbell is that the conversation and the concerns rather around his arm length, this is just another one of those sort of annual conversations that happen. Joe Burrow was questioned for his hand size. You've got other offensive linemen. I think it was Peter Skorlonsky who was questioned about his arm length, if I remember correctly. You look at Will Campbell, like these guys all end up getting into the league, and they play the position that they play one way or another. And I promise that the arm length, unless it's 29 inches, is not going to be too short for a guy like Will Campbell that has the kind of talent that he has. I applaud him for his comments as well when he was kind of talking about it, kind of standing up for himself a little bit. But I think 32 and 5/8, 33 inches, both of those cross the 32-inch threshold. That's what you're looking for an offensive tackle. And sometimes even coming in below that, you'll find productive guys in the league.
It is something that literally only matters from February to late April
100%.
Every year.
No one asked this question at all throughout his entire – he was a bona fide top 15 pick, top 10 pick, and now all of a sudden you're telling me that in March you changed your mind because, I thought he was going to be 33 and a quarter. Like, come on. Where's the real line here?
He allowed 2 sacks over 3 years. There's a couple inches on the arms. I don't know anymore. Kiren Lacy, I did want to ask about that because, look, obviously there's the off the field that's going to be hashed out in his interviews and things of that nature, and we'll see how that impacts his draft stock. How did he look on the field today? Because it's been a while since any of us have seen Kiren Lacy. I mean, since the Oklahoma game, because he missed the Senior Bowl, wasn't at the Combine, didn't play in the bowl game. How did Kiren Lacy look?
Yeah, I mean, he had a pretty decent day. I think maybe folks would have expected a little bit more when it came to his 40-yard dash. He clocked in. Originally, the timing was showing like 4.5, 4.51, but then that time has since changed to 4.6. So it's going to be interesting to see what it looks like once that 40-yard dash gets updated. Vertical leap of 33.5 inches, and then he ran a short shuttle. He had to restart his short shuttle. I think he ran it about 4 times before he finally kind of got it under. But I think that's one of those things that kind of shows you a little bit of tenacity from him, right? Like, I screwed up here, I screwed up there. Let me take a break. Let me come back. Let me try it again. Okay, well, I got it. You know what I mean? And I liked seeing that. I thought that was a good kind of display of his, no, I'm going to get it. I want to go out there and do it. I liked seeing that personally, and I think that's something that will stand out. The other stuff in terms of the off-field stuff, which forgive me, I'm not super knowledgeable of, so I won't comment on it too much. But, like you said, those are going to be things that are going to get hashed out in interviews and all that other stuff, and then whatever other processes that exist outside of the world of football will happen, I'm sure, too, or whatever that all is. And stuff. But in terms of what it is that he brings to you as a potential, I don't know, day 3 wideout, maybe he finds his way into day 2, depending upon how those interviews go. Top 30 visits, visiting with other teams, private workouts, stuff like that. Like, he's got a lot of opportunities to raise his stock, but I don't think he hurt himself, depending upon how that 40-yard dash time ends up being viewed by some people. But again, these numbers send people back to the tape. They look at the tape, see what they can confirm, deny, whatever it might be, and then they continue to move forward from it.
Couple more for you, Ross, and I very much appreciate your time.
Of course.
He's not draftable this year. He's going to play quarterback for LSU, but Nuss was out there throwing. Any googly eyes out there for him yet? And did he put on a good show so far, just in the early audition?
Yeah, it's funny when you asked me the first question when you were like, who are the people that gathered around? They got gathered around for him, that I almost mentioned him just kind of as a joke. But really, like, seriously, I mean, he got a lot of attention, and I think that was a good thing for him to go out there and go out there and throw, let people get eyes on him again a little bit early, all that. Obviously, him and the New Orleans Saints are going to be inconsistent, are going to be a part of a bunch of consistent conversations over the course of this year, because the future at quarterback has big question marks for New Orleans right now. And Doug Nussmeier, Garrett's dad, is the offensive coordinator here in New Orleans now and everything. And, Doug was a quarterback here in New Orleans, drafted by the New Orleans Saints back in the 90s. And so, it's going to be a cool story. And so I think a lot of people are going to be watching for that. And so I would expect the 2 names to pick up the most steam in terms of the New Orleans Saints year over the course of the next year are going to be LSU quarterback Garrett Nussmeier, and then, of course, Arch Manning, right, over in Texas. And look, we don't know if Arch is actually even going to come out next year. And so, but Nussmeier will be out. And so I think that an opportunity there for him and the Saints to keep in constant communication to an extent, whether Garrett likes it or not, considering his dad's an employee. I think that those things are going to be continued heated up conversations all throughout the year.
Last thing for you, you mentioned earlier in our chat, the Boise State Pro Day and the Ohio State Pro Day as well had contingents of Saints brass and coaches there. Anything that's maybe trickled out of those 2 events that you could pass along that maybe caught the Saints' eye?
Yeah, I mean, there were some reports, and I've confirmed elsewhere that, Kellen Moore spent some time chatting with Will Howard, quarterback that is going to go into, that will be going into the draft out of Ohio State. Fits a little bit more of like the prototypical quarterback, pocket passer type in the league and everything. And so he's an interesting later round option. And when I say later, I just mean like mid to late round. And so, he ends up being a day 2, day 3 guy if the Saints end up, doing what they've done the past few drafts, which is take a swing on, a 4th or 5th round quarterback, then all of a sudden, like, Will Howard enters that conversation. And so he would definitely be one to kind of keep an eye on. I would watch out for guys like Josh Simmons, the offensive tackle. I think he put up like 33 bench reps during his time. And I mean, just absolutely outstanding. And by the way, Garrett Dellinger, let me shout out Garrett Dellinger real quick. 30 bench reps during his time, 5'10" on the 40-yard dash. I mean, that dude actually showed up quite a bit, too. I should have highlighted him earlier as well. But one big thing to watch coming out of Ohio State is Tyreek Williams. Tyreek Williams, while running his 40, went down with a knee injury. Obviously, defensive line continues to be a focus for New Orleans, so that's going to be an injury to kind of monitor going in. And then Boise State, I mean, Joel Thomas, New Orleans Saints running back coach, was out there taking in the Boise State one. I wonder why.
Yeah.
But that's all I did. It's got Ashton Ginty written all over it.
Why would they send the running backs coach to Boise? Huh? Man, interesting plan of attack. Ross Jackson is who he is. Ross Jack on Twitter at Ross Jackson. LouisianaSports.net. Go there, read all this stuff. He's gonna have all the pro day coverage, plenty more draft coverage, and of course, listen to the Locked On Saints podcast as well. Ross, we always appreciate it, man. It's great to chat. Thank you, and we'll do it again.
Always a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me on. Take care. Stay safe. Talk to you soon.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.